Hi, and welcome to Unhinged History, the podcast where Angie and Theresa team up and tell you the stories about history that we've been compulsively learning about. And we're about to info dump on you. So brace yourselves, get a spill chart or a spill sheet.
Or a garbage bag.
Yeah, or one of those really big lobster bibs that you get when you go to the classy restaurants and you're dressed up, and then they put this
Ooh,
plastic tarp over the front of you because
like a
nothing says
poncho.
romantic.
Do not ask her to marry you dressed like that. Or do. I mean, do.
I
If you
mean,
do,
hey,
send us a picture.
honestly, we're here for it. If you go to Joe's Crab Shack and they write the saucy messages on the front of it too, I mean, that's even better.
I love Joe's Crab Shack.
I was so sad when we lost our crab shack to the pandemic.
Oh, I am so sorry about that.
I mean, that was really how we celebrated everything.
Well, as it should be.
I mean, bucket of crab. They have
Giant bib.
those drinks you can get where they drop the grenadine in and they yell shark attack, brah! We may or may not have an untold number of sharks that in child's play chest because of our propensity to get hammered and give her toys at the table.
I never mind.
I mean, we didn't exactly get hammered. I shouldn't say it like that, but
Well, when you said it like that, my first thought was a hammerhead shark.
I mean they did have some of
See?
those.
Yeah, there
Yeah,
you
I
go.
mean, we were really trying to help her catch them all. That was our.
It's like her Pokemon quest.
Yeah, I mean, it was rather embarrassing one day when, she's playing in her room and she's got this pile of sharks and mother-in-law says, "Where did all those come from?" Um, the drinks that you get at Joe's Crab Shack, the alcoholic ones. We get when we bring her, we get those just so she can have the sharks to play with. And seeing them
Hmm.
all together makes us look really bad. It's like collecting beer cans for the child to stack.
Okay. When my mom visited for the first time in like, I don't know, probably a decade, she was looking at my kitchen, and at the time I had like this massive shelf that lined the roof,
Yeah.
and it was
Wait, it lined
covered
the
in
roof.
like it not the roof, like this, like it was
It
a
went
parallel with the ceiling.
okay. I was about to
So
say
like,
your kitchen suddenly became just outdoor.
no, sorry, parallel with the ceiling, and it had like 10 different whiskey bottles on it, maybe. And one vodka bottle that was the White Walker Game of Thrones
Okay.
bottle, which, by the way, I didn't drink any of. My friend did and gave me the bottle.
Empty?
Yeah. Another one was the Kraken rum, which I hated the rum. I took literally a shot of the rum and then poured the rest down the sink. I just wanted the bottle. Okay, whatever. So kept all the bottles for the longest time because I thought they were awesome. And my my mom comes in and she's like, "Honey, do we need to have a talk? Have you been drinking a lot?" And
Only if
Ian
these were
is
from the month.
right.
Like,
Ian is standing behind her, like beet red and like suffocating. He's laughing so hard. And she's like, "Why is he laughing, honey?" And I'm like, I don't know how to tell you this. And he goes, "Patty, it's taken her 10 years to get that many of those bottles. I don't think she has a drinking problem." um, and to boot, she didn't drink most of them. And the other half that maybe she's the one that she bought, she cooks her meat in whiskey. I marinate tri-tip in whiskey.
mm,
And so like 95% of those came
Mom,
from
she's
cooking,
she's too busy giving the whiskey to the children. She's not drinking all of it.
which was exactly where I went because when Ethan was teething one night, she called and she was like, "Wow, he sounds really miserable." And I'm like, "Yeah, he's super miserable, thinking about rubbing some rum all over his gums." Totally being sarcastic. I was
Yeah.
absolutely not going to be doing this. But because it was my mom, like, not gonna miss this opportunity.
Okay, so similar vein. it was Kiddo's first Christmas. We took her down to Mike's parents were hanging out, right? And Mike's sister and her husband came down, and like we're all talking, and Kiddo's 6 weeks old, right? And so my sister-in-law's making this comment about how her mom used to rub whiskey on her gums when she was teething. And her
Yeah.
mom was like, I absolutely did not. There is no, that didn't, what? I'm
Cite your
sorry.
source.
And she goes, yeah, mom, you did this. And I was just like, okay, first off, unless she was 3, how would she know? Like how? And
Unless you told her, how would she know?
right. I mean, she's if she's not old enough to remember, and infants teething children usually are too young, and she was adamant. And my mother-in-law was mortified. And my husband and I are just sitting there with popcorn, like, go on.
Oh, do go on.
Fascinating. And then what happened?
So that's how they react.
And
They
like,
do remember.
yeah, and then sister-in-law's like, well, yeah, you see that picture of me in the hall where I'm, a year and a half and I have my hand on the stump. I had to have that stump in the photo because I was too fat to stand on my own. And we were like, really? Eating that popcorn. You were not too fat. That stump was there just because it was a prop. So this episode is going to come out right before April Fool's Day, like when I look at the calendar and get this whole thing going. And I know you had told me that you had a delightful April Fool's Day story that you were holding on to. And that
Yes, this story has been sitting in my back pocket done for 6 weeks.
I've got to know. I have
You gotta know.
absolutely got to know.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. Do you want to hear the players, the cast of characters that are involved first, or do you just want me to go right into it?
I mean, I would say start with the sources and then however you feel the story's best told.
I feel like there's no way to tell it without just hitting it right in the face.
All right.
Okay. Let's scroll down to my sources. I have a lot of sources. Um, two of my sources. Okay, so this is this is one of the reasons why I love this story so much. Two of my sources are YouTube videos. One of them published by the BBC, which is the actual moment in history. Like the BBC publishes all of their like little shorts
Yeah.
on YouTube. So it is super fun. You can actually go back and watch the whole incident as it happened in 1957. Allthat'sinteresting.com, the inflation tool, as we love to know how much
Yeah.
money is. ARST Technica.com, BBC, Wikipedia, because I had a question that only Wikipedia could answer, and history.com are my sources.
All right.
Okay. I want to tell you the story about the Great Spaghetti Tree Hoax of 1957.
Okay. Every the great blank of year
Mm-hmm.
is always a word salad.
Okay, so when I say the Great Spaghetti Tree Hoax of 1957, does it make you believe that it happens yearly? Because I feel like when you say it like that, it happens more than once.
No, I mean, I get it. I get it, like the Pig War of 1838,
That's
the
true.
Sanford, the Great Fire of like the Beer Flood of 1840. Like those, like that's what I hear. I hear big crazy incident that happened. Like, well, back in my time during the Great Molasses Flood of, like
That's true. That's true. Okay, I'll let you win that one. But it makes me laugh so hard that that's what it was called, and I knew as soon as I saw that, I was like, this is a story I need to tell yesterday because this is absolute gold. So now I'm going to tell you who's involved because without telling you who's involved, I just have to explain this individual. Richard Dimbley. He was the BBC's first war correspondent, and He, quote, was a revered and trusted public figure, sort of the Richard Attenborough of the 1950s, with enough gravitas to float an aircraft carrier.
I want somebody to say that about me. I want to earn the
Two,
ability for someone to say that about me.
right? So that statement comes from Panama's producer David Wheeler, and they believe that the reason this played out so well and worked so good is that Richard Dimbley was this gentleman who never like he just straight to the facts, ma'am. Like he gave you the news and never gave anybody a reason to think otherwise.
The Walter Cronkite of their time.
Yeah. Yeah. So Michael Peacock was the editor of the show Panama and the man who approved the ideas.
Now, hold on real quick. I feel like we've used the word Panama twice in
I'm gonna
relation to a show like I would know what it is, but
excuse me, not Panama, Panorama. I said the wrong word. And
okay,
I'm
because
going
I
to
was like,
explain Panorama in
the
just a second.
country had its own series on the BBC.
No. Okay, I'll just tell you what it is. So Panorama is a current affairs program. IMBD has this to say. They're a current affairs program featuring interviews and investigative reports on all aspect of British life. The BBC says it's an investigative documentary series revealing the truth about the stories that mattered. It first aired in 1953 and is considered one of the longest running television news magazine programs.
Television news mag. That had to be a bizarre genre.
I read a little bit because I was like, what is that? Googled it. It's I don't know much beyond this, but it was like a format of telling the like the weekly news that came out of Germany that was like the way I understand it, and I could be super wrong, but this is the way I understood it, was that it had the same idea as looking through a magazine or looking through a newspaper, but it was visually on your TV or auditorily over your radio.
Okay.
But like that same kind of flow is my understanding. So they aired weekly and they still air weekly. They started in 1953 and then Panorama has been going. There was a
Still.
short, yeah, still.
Okay.
Um, so the so Michael Peacock is the editor of the show, and I really hope I don't pronounce this guy's name wrong. I'm gonna
You
try really hard.
I mean, so far we've already mispronounced panorama as
Panama,
Panama.
Panama. Hey, you know what? It's early in the morning. I was thinking about Panama.
I mean, so carry on because it can't get worse.
Charles, how it could. Charles de Jaeger is a native of Austria, and he is the cameraman from whence the idea came. There is also involved a local handful of Swiss ladies that need to be wearing traditional costume of the Swiss people at the time.
Okay.
So here's
Like
the
in
story.
57 they had traditional garb, or is this
Like,
just
yeah, what you would expect of traditional garb, like the
okay?
like I don't want to say lederhosen, but you know the cute little poofy
Yeah, I'm
sleeved.
I'm I'm picking it up. Yeah.
I
But
can send you pictures. There are pictures.
that's what I'm here for.
Okay, so specifically in the 1950s, pasta and more specifically spaghetti was not well known in the UK. Most people's understanding of it from the time was that it came from a tin can with some type of tomato sauce. I'm getting real pre-spaghettio vibes here.
Yeah, I mean, I automatically just retranslated the straight noodles to the little
So did
pasta donuts.
so did I. Um, so Charles is talking with Michael. Charles, the cameraman, is talking with Michael, the producer, and he's like, these people, and they're just having a go of like funny things that they've heard, just kind of shooting the shit, if you will, shop talk, standing around the coffee pot type conversation. And
Okay.
he says this: I had a teacher in school that used to say, Boys, you're so stupid. You'd believe me if I told you that spaghetti grows on trees. And then ding, it hits him. He's going to be in Switzerland just before April Fool's Day. So he looks at Michael, the producer, the editor, and says, "Hey, can I put together a little segment and we can put it out to the people of the UK because I think it would just be absolutely gold. It's going to be a great gag, and I'm already working on an assignment in Switzerland. Come on, man, can we please do it?" And Michael's like, "Right then, good luck, chum," is what I'm imagining he would say,
Right.
and he gives him £100 to make this happen, which is roughly today $2,800. And then he just walks away. He
I'm
refuses.
okay. First off, bruh got bankrolled $2,800 for a prank.
Yes, he did. That didn't go above Michael. So Michael didn't tell any of the higher ups at the BBC or in the panorama community because he did not want Charles's plan to get the kibosh.
This could end in tears.
Absolutely, it could, but it doesn't.
Oh, ooh, okay. I mean, you shouldn't have maybe blown it because I was getting ready for the please step into HR's office.
I will like that could have happened, but none of my sources say that's what happened. I think in this particular instance, the British had a real good sense of humor about the whole thing, especially the people at the BBC that had to answer the phones later. So Charles gets his £100 from Michael, says he's on his way to Switzerland. Michael just pretends like this conversation never happens. And he arranges I am gonna butcher this. He arranges this I'm not gonna call it an interview. He arranges this a video shoot to take place at a hotel in Calistone near Lake Laguna. And he it's so good. He shows a broadcast of a group of people harvesting spaghetti from the trees in Switzerland. Jaeger buys 20 pounds of uncooked homemade spaghetti, and he hangs the strands from the branches of the laurel trees around the lake to make it look like they were spaghetti trees.
But like, how? Because spaghetti,
I'm
like,
glad you asked. So, incidentally, the cooked spaghetti just slips off the branches.
yeah.
So, they have to keep the uncooked fresh spaghetti between damp cloths between shoots so that it doesn't dry out. Like it needs to have a little bit of moisture, but he also needs it to be completely uniform. He hires local women to dress in the local costume, in the Swiss national costume, and he pretends to harvest the spaghetti. They fill wicker baskets and then place the strands out in the sun to dry, air
Okay.
quote dry.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. The way you just said Swiss national costume, I'm imagining that at the age of 18, every national is issued a uniform that hangs in their closet.
You know, I'm maybe.
It's like, well, you are now an adult. This is your coming of age. Here is your
Yeah.
right to vote. Here is,
And you must wear this while you do so.
yeah,
Yeah.
and the national uniform.
Yeah. Yeah, so they're wearing the national uniform. They delicately pick the harvest from the branches of the laurel tree, and they lay them in the wicker basket, and then they go lay them out to dry. At the end of the shoot, all the actors are rewarded with a great spaghetti feast, which is also part of the final segment. Then they get Mr. Dimbley involved. And, quote, in a perfect deadpan, Dimbley noted that the spaghetti harvest in Switzerland would be particularly bountiful that year thanks to the almost complete eradication of the spaghetti tree's main predator, the spaghetti weevil.
I was supposed to the Italians. Like, did they neglect the fact that this isn't even like a Swiss dish?
It just gets it. That was my first thought was like, this isn't, no, whatever, do your thing.
I mean, although now I kind of want an additional segment run by Monty Python of them attempting to eradicate
The spaghetti weevil or the
which
Italians, whatever.
I could
Take your
just
pick.
I just imagine something completely silly.
Yes, I feel like Charles the Jaeger really had Monty Python in mind when he created this skit. Like, I didn't get to interview him, but I feel like with a sense of humor like this, there had to be some Monty Python in there somewhere, or maybe some Mel Brooks
Well, I mean,
involved.
yeah, because I mean, this did predate both Monty Python and Mel Brooks, right? I mean, because
Right.
57,
So, like, what they started in the 60s with Monty Python?
that's, I mean, what it seems like. What if the Pythons were influenced by this news broadcast?
I'm gonna
I
need to
mean,
Google that now
what if they were like, you know what? I got an idea. What if we do an entire, I don't know, series on just stuff like this?
because it'd be perfection and the people will love it. And they
And now for
do.
something different.
Yes, something completely different. So, all that's interesting.com says this. Sir Ian Jacob, the general director of the BBC at the time, one of the most senior executives, was fooled into believing it, even for just a moment. Jacob reportedly had to research spaghetti in three separate books to confirm that the segment was pulling his leg.
This book must be wrong. I must grab a second book.
Yes. My other source says something similar, but I wanted to share it as well. The BBC's own Director General, Sir Ian Jacob, was taken in, at least at first. He and his wife tried to look it up in the Encyclopedia Britannica, only to discover that the encyclopedia at the time didn't even mention spaghetti. The spaghetti harvest was a splendid idea, beautifully shot and organized, he later wrote to De Jaeger. The item has caused a great deal of delight in one way or the other. So after this aired, because Richard Dimbley was so Walter Cronkite of his time, um, there was an immediate call, like flood of calls from viewers. Some caught on to the joke, but according to the BBC's Leonard Malal, mainly the calls were requests for the BBC to settle family arguments. The husband knew it must be true that spaghetti grows on a bush because Richard Dimbley said so, and the wife knew it must be made with flour and water, but neither could convince the other.
Okay, I like that because you know the wife's like in the kitchen going, look, I made this. I made this. What do you call
Yes.
this? It's not spaghetti because it doesn't grow on a tree. I'm gonna kill you.
That's exactly literally. I was like, I can 100% see how this is going. So a few wanted to know where they could get their own spaghetti trees, and BBC operators were instructed to respond with place a sprig of spaghetti in a tin of tomato sauce and hope for the best.
It's just rotting. Everything is rotting. Well, you just didn't. Did you make it from scratch or did you use the? See, that's the problem. We just can't import the good stuff. So you have to make your own tomato sauce, just like someone's Nona used to do it. Because again, we're back at the
Exactly.
Italians.
Right. And I wanted when I was reading this, when I was looking for sources on this, because it is a short story, but I kind of wanted to know more information. Nowhere in any of my articles, nowhere in anything that I saw did it mention that the UK was like that the citizens of the UK were like, but wait, that's an Italian dish. I assume that they just assumed that Switzerland is so close to Italy that made sense. Like, oh yeah, that's where the stuff grows, and then they import it to Italy, and Italy makes this dish.
Italy has its own trees, but he was there at the time of the harvest. And they look, their tomato sauce has grapes in it. It's kind of weird, but it's just what they do. It's fine.
Pretty much. But also, I thought it was really fascinating that pasta, specifically spaghetti, was not well known in 1957 in the UK, but I guess that makes sense. But at the same time, to me, to fool an entire country of people into thinking, like, just for funsies, that actually is how you do it, and people argued about it at the dinner table for weeks following because Richard Dimbley said so. Makes me laugh so hard. And he himself thought it was like just the funnest. Like, oh, I am here for this. You can use my voice for whatever you want. So he goes into recording and it is absolutely, it's like 3 minutes of the funniest footage, and his voiceover is so professional and so like you want to believe every word he says because obviously he's not lying to you. And it made me laugh so hard. Like there was one article that talked about how they did this as a way to teach people that you can't believe everything you read or you see. But I genuinely believe that it was just them having a go. Like, let's just have fun.
Well, I'm glad that back in 57, they taught everyone the lesson not to read or believe everything they hear or read. I'm so grateful that lesson was learned. Great job, everyone. Look how
Around
far
the
we've come.
sound. Right. I don't think that was at all on their mind in
No,
1957. I think they were out to just have a good go, and they did, and it was a blast. And you can go and watch the entire segment, and it is so funny. Like the spaghetti weevil. It's just so silly. I wish it was in color. It's not in color, it's in black and white, but because I wanted it to be in color so we could see the national costume of the Swiss. But it's so charming and it made me laugh so hard. And I have been dying to send you pictures and to send you the video of this since I learned about it, but I haven't. So say fini. There you
good
go. The Great Spaghetti Hoax of 1957.
good job of restraint there. And give my regards
You.
to Ian for you being like, no, but look at this picture. Okay, I don't care if you, but Teresa would love this picture. So just act like her.
Can you please I'm just going to send it to you and I need you to respond exactly as she would. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I need a laughy face.
Thank you. No, when I first sent it to him, he was like, "Oh my gosh," that was his response. I was like, "Oh, this we're never gonna hear the end of this one." That's awesome. Place a sprig of spaghetti in a tin of tomato sauce and hope for the best. Can you imagine making that like that's your phone call all day because every housewife in the country has called to say my husband is convinced that Mr. Dimbley is right.
Can you imagine the marketing team that had to create the FAQ page and the script for the operators on what to say?
I think they loved it.
I mean, okay, you could tell that that's exactly what I had to do yesterday, when it was just like, thankfully, it wasn't like come up with, ways to take the piss, but it was just like, okay, here's how, no, don't start with that. Don't start. Do not
Only
let those be the first words out of your mouth. Start with something positive. End on a positive note. Hope for the best.
yes, and hope for the best. Like I want to hear more firsthand accounts of the people that worked there and had to deal with this. But from all accounts, even the director general, Sir Ian Jacob, was totally delighted by the whole thing. Like, well played, Charles. Well played.
I want to hear the chain smoking operator who's just like, yeah, so we got calls from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. every night. Folks wanting to prove their husband's wrong. Tomato cans just flew off the shelves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wonder. I didn't see anything about that, but I'm really curious now if it caused the sale of tomato sauce to rise in the UK.
We couldn't import enough olives to feed the country. It was bad. Parmesan cheese just going bananas. Nobody could handle it anymore.
You made me clap out loud.
Typically, claps are audible.
I love that your the 7 to 7 chain smoking lady is clearly from somewhere in the eastern United States and nowhere near Britain. I love it. She's an import. She moved there because her husband's in the army. Yeah, I love it.
Thankfully, he'd done a tour in Napoli, so he knew the real thing.
I knew better.
So when you told me you were doing a specific story for April Fool's Day, and you were so thrilled on this, I went into a tailspin because I have a list of stories. I'm like, I'm going to do one for my list, and none of them seem to fit. And then I started this deep, dark rabbit hole on like looking up good pranks and like historical pranks and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I found an entire thing that was so brand new to me that I'd never heard even a hint about.
Really?
So I'm going to tell you the story of Count Robert, Count Robert's Hesdin Castle of Pranks. And every
Okay.
time I say the word Hesdin, it's really pronounced like it's spelled Hesdin. So if you go to look this up later, so this
Okay.
is in France where half the letters aren't said out loud. Um,
Thank God, as they should be.
yeah. So my sources, this started with a JSTOR Daily article called the label or titled "The Medieval Castle That Pranked Its Visitors" by Amelia Sloth,
Ooh, okay.
and then "Aristocratic Power and Natural" in quotation marks landscape, the castle garden or the garden park at Erdon, circa 1291 to 1302 by Sharon Farmer.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so we're going back.
I'm
Okay.
so excited.
So again, I'm going to keep trying to say Edon. I'm going to mispronounce it at least a dozen times. So
Hey, at least you got the right place. I said Panama for panorama.
they could have had a couple segments filmed there. We don't know.
I mean, yeah, I'm sure there actually probably was if you think about it. But again, my bad because I was actually thinking about the movie Sahara and we thought we were in Panama. That so
Mm,
that's not why I was thinking about that.
okay. So the elite of medieval Europe were no strangers to elaborate entertainment. I mean, we've all seen the period pieces. So you're imagining banquets of feast-laden tables that floated from ceilings, wine that poured from fountains, rose water and sugared almonds that pelted guests' head like hail. That part doesn't sound especially exciting. Like that sounds painful.
I think I would be more ticked off that y'all got up in my hair like that.
I mean, just it's just treats for later when you fish them out.
Hmm. No,
All right. Well,
I'm not. Like you could find that treat in my pocket later. That'd be fine. But in my hair, probably gonna go cry about it.
oh,
Yeah, I
I'm
got a
gonna write
soft
that
spot.
down.
Yeah, I got a soft spot for my hair.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when nobility took the time to delight and astound their guests with these magical feasts, it really did nothing but demonstrate their wealth and power. And Edon in France, this was an idyllic beauty of grounds that was counterpointed by, quote, sadistic slapstick of the castle's engines of amusement, prank machines that soaked guests with jets of water, spattered them with flour, flung them into piles of feathers.
Oh
Edon
my goodness.
thus carried the performance of wealth and power to unprecedented extreme.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I am here for this. Let us learn more because holy crap.
Do
This,
go on.
yes, this project begun under Count Robert II, who lived from 1250 to 1302. Perhaps they think that these were inspired by his travels in the Mediterranean. It was continued and elaborated by his daughter, Maha of Artois. I butchered that name. I don't think that's how it's said. And later by Philip the Good. And over the centuries, its amusements developed and its fame spread. So this just kept going. Okay. But first, we're going to zoom out. We're going to talk more about who Count Robert was. He's the nephew of King Louis the Ninth, or King Louis the Ninth, who later was canonized as Saint Louis or Saint Louis.
Louis.
Louis. Okay. Robert's father died in the Crusades, and it was Saint Louis's brother. That's how nephews work. Um,
Thanks for that.
yeah, I mean, I'm here for you. His mom was Matilda of Brabant, and she was a single parent for the first 4 years of Robert's life. And it's then that she marries someone named Count Saint Pol. And from what I understand about medieval law, which isn't a ton, it like you would assume, okay, so as soon as his dad dies, he's technically an orphan and he inherits all of his dad's stuff,
Right.
even though mom is still alive, that took me a second to wrap my brain. I was like, but mom is still there. I was like, oh yeah, she's a woman. She has nothing. Um,
In fact.
and so it's just like, oh yeah, okay. So it could be it's easy to assume that he had this rather indulgent childhood, because now he is the count and
Right.
he inherits all the lands and titles. However, it's Robert's relation to King Louis that prevents this. The sons and daughters of the king were told repeatedly to lead virtuous, sober, exemplary lives, just as their holy relative King Louis did. And King Louis, he avoids all of the aristocratic trimmings towards the end of his life. He writes down his own accord that is now called The Teachings and Instructions of Saint Louis. And so I'm reading this and I'm like, okay, but if he wrote them all down, of course he's going to play up his own virtues. He's going to read more into what he's doing because those are the machinations of his own mind. I don't want to brag, but I'm pretty humble kind of deal.
I love it. I don't want to brag, but I'm a humble guy.
Right.
Yeah.
Um, we do know the king was said to never hunt, gamble. He watered down his wine. He rejected elaborate meals, loathed tournaments, and only tolerated minstrelsy within the limits of rigorous decency. So like
Why are you even the king then?
I mean, like, did I mention that this was French? Because he seemed to be the antithesis of what I understand as French culture.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
But like one of the things that cracked me up so much is that he dressed in such a plain style that it antagonized his wife.
Okay, so is it like you're meaning like so Ian went through a phase where for the first like 10 years we were together, all he wore were khakis and white t-shirts, and that's fine. Like I was actually quite partial to that. But then he started buying like printed t-shirts and like retro t-shirts, and I was super cool with that. But then one day I bought him a neon orange t-shirt and I insisted that he love it, or it's hoodie, and he still doesn't wear it, and it antagonizes me because he never wears it.
Um, I think this would be the equivalent of Ian coming out in just a tore up sweatsuit that you're like, babe, we're going on a date. I'm going to need you to look like you have a home.
That never happens. Okay.
But I mean, I think it was like so below his station that his wife was like, we are entertaining the diplomats and heads of state of 14 different castles, and you are dressed like
In
you.
a burlap sack.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. Thankfully Ian loves to get dressed. That's so
Mhm.
got it.
So Robert grows up relishing these visits with his uncle, and he recounts the saintly man as an adult very often at parties and stuff. And it's despite all of this, very, kind of barren childhood that he grows up and kind of returns to this childlike fascination with games and pleasure. Even though he does retain some of his uncle's piety, and like on Maundy Thursday, he makes a practice of washing the feet of a number of poor people.
Oh, that's cool.
So it's like he does retain some of that. Okay, but he
So he
seemingly
he grows up in King Louis's court. Is that what my
yeah.
understanding is? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. But then as an adult, I mean, so he does still maintain some of that piety. He does, as soon as grows into his own, he becomes more eccentric. He does things like adopt a wolf as a pet and then let it roam freely, and it often goes and kills the animals of the surrounding peasants. So,
As they do.
like when I learned that, I was like, okay, go on, tell me more about this wolf, because I grew up with a wolf, right? So I'm like, how? Go on, like I
Chickens?
uh hold that thought. There's no chickens in this thing's count, but the wolf, according to an article, said that it was kind of a status symbol for Robert. It wasn't used in hunting, but was more just to impress others that he could be associated with the mighty beast. It also had this hidden message because this was also in like the werewolf lore and the height of, scares and stuff like that, that the wolf displayed this hidden message of being able to break with standard social conventions and Christian mercy.
Hmm.
And so that
Okay.
seemed like a very interesting message to have. In the spring of 1302, the wolf had quite a killing spree that it went on with the surrounding peasants' animals. In the spring, it killed 18 sheep, 2 lambs, 2 calves, and 3 geese.
Wow.
And so every time something like this
The geese
happened,
had it coming.
they're instruments of Satan. Um, but every time this would happen, the peasants would come to Count Robert and they'd be like, yo, like we got to do something about this. And so, he would compensate them for their loss and things like that. And it's about this time that Robert outfits the wolf with bells as a result. And it didn't make the peasants happy. And accounts say that Robert fell into a fit of laughter as he was reminded of the Aesop's fable where they belled the cat. I don't remember that one, but the belling of the wolf didn't stop the carnage. It merely heralded savagery.
Oh, that's rough.
Yeah. So you'd be like, I hear the bells. Great. What else did it kill?
So get the sheep inside.
Too late. The bells mean it's already gone.
It's already come and gone, yeah. That's unfortunate.
So, I mean, to know that he just laughed at this, like, okay, hold that thought. Because imagining you're visiting Count Robert's chateau, you try to open a window and it splashes you with water and then slams back shut. You open a book of ballads, it flings soot in your face. You run to the mirror to see how all this dousing affected your looks, and poof, you're covered in flour. Like,
I
I
love it.
I was so excited by all of this. And then the nastiest of all was this trick. A statue cries out, ordering you to run to the next chamber in the name of the count. If you obey, this huge automata in the next room beat you with sticks.
What is an automata?
Like a machine, a robot, like an old-timey.
Like a sparring bot?
No, no. Okay, so this is one of the rabbit holes I went down. I started watching a ton of documentaries like Automata That Speaks. I need to know more. I need to figure this out. And I started watching like documentaries on it started off as like old autonoma. And there is an autonoma museum in England that has little machines, not all of them are little, but like imagine wooden robots that are able to do rudimentary movements.
Okay.
Okay.
Like
Um,
through gears and things of that nature?
yeah,
Okay.
like
Okay.
through just kind of clockwork mechanisms, they're able to do some interesting things.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm here for it.
I mean, just to know that, like, first off, it's not often you get to read the word automata. And so I was like, oh,
Nope, it's a full
yes.
word.
And then to hear that there was an automata that, like, cried out with words and then another one beat someone with sticks. And I was like, no, no. And I was like, Hubs, I need to figure this out. Like, I was looking up like ancient Roman and Greek automata and like trying to figure out, how they got a voice box and a recording and it to play and speakers. I was like, we didn't have that technology. Like, and my husband's like, they probably had a pipe and they probably had a human at the other end of the pipe. And even though that pipe curves, it still carries sound. So you have a human delivering in the name of the count, I need you to run to this next room. And then this machine beat you with a stick.
Could you imagine being that servant? All right, well, it's time to go do the callings.
It's Tuesday at 6:50. I've got to head to this little pipe in the wall. And then the next one cracks me up because it said there was an assortment of pipes used to, quote, wet ladies from below, unquote. So, sprinkler system that sprayed water up the skirts, like a bidet, but
Hey,
a surprise bidet.
surprise!
Mm-hmm. You're clean.
Ta-da!
And so the visitors would emerge plastered from head to toe in flour and soot, soaked with clothes, makeup, and hairdos ruined.
Oh,
Why did they come? Were
they
they
knew.
maybe not at first, but you would after a while this word spreads. Were they simply powerless to refuse the count's invitation? Or did they at some level delight in the shock and confusion, just like we delight in roller coasters or haunted houses?
I
And
think
it's
so.
like, I
Yeah.
mean, there's got to be some of that. Like they didn't have TV, there was no Netflix,
Yeah.
Candy Crush hadn't come around yet.
I mean, I would be delighted to walk through a house like that and see how much like Big Kid got in the face because he's the one that opens all the doors first.
Right.
Yeah,
So
I could see it.
imagine there's a bridge that is watched over by a cadre of mechanical monkeys clad in badger skin to give them the appearance of life. And that
Oh,
frightened me. I don't know why, just knowing that they're like, okay, wooden monkeys, I'm okay with. You put badger skin on them. No, I'm done. Tap out. That's too
yeah,
much.
that is terrifying.
And then we don't have a lot of information about like what it looked like or pictures or images because Erdan was destroyed by war in 1553 and
Mm.
all of the engines of amusement went with it. So we'll never know precisely how they worked, nor will we know what motivated Count Robert to begin the project of their construction in the first place. I mean,
The idle rich.
that could, and he kind of rebelled against, you know, his uncle's lifestyle towards the end. But we do have a little bit of information. We've got bills for the construction of his machines, maps of the complex, and then there's not several, but a couple accounts that make sense of all of the oddity that we see. And so when we zoom out and we look at the widering, the castle's wider surroundings, it can kind of shed a little bit of light. Erdan's park fanned out around the castle, and it was thick with meadows and woodlands and marshes. They had deer and hart, which are red-tailed deer, Hart, that grazed the grassy slopes, streams that ran with carp and bream, and meadows that were dotted in strawberries. It was described as an aristocratic cornucopia, a land of plenty.
Yeah.
All of this, though, was completely fabricated. Like that appearance of natural wealth was far from natural. Like human hands, like sculpted out the landscape, they dug out the ponds, and they erected huge walls that depend on the wildlife. And so, like all of the deer that were there, they were not able to kind of come and go as they pleased. And Count Robert, there was one report that said that Count Robert was kind of the reason, a contributing factor to rabbits ending up in Europe because he imported rabbits for this garden and they lived in the walled fence. And then eventually, they kind of,
Didn't.
yeah, they kind of escaped. And so it was very interesting to know that like rabbits didn't originally live in Europe. Like I just assumed they did, that they originated in Africa. And I was like, quoi?
Yeah.
Like I just assumed it's the rabbit. It's all no, it's
Rabbit
the
stew. That's a very European thing. Weird.
it was the idle rich that, gave them rabbits.
Thanks, guys.
And so we have the whimsical automata that were scattered through the woodland paths. And, so I'm kind of like, wow, okay. They had a pavilion house that had gilded mechanical birds, and that these
Oh.
creatures spun an aura of enchantment over the park, turning it into kind of a fairyland. So this was, like a Disneyland 1.0.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Erdan was a reflection of these tales of knighthood and chivalry that Count Robert was just thrilled with. And his preoccupation with these narrative structures were mirrored in the layout of the park. One of the things that writers have said is that the castle's devices were meant to strip away the strict exoskeleton of court propriety. Like it was designed to remove all, like you strip away the makeup, you strip away the wigs, you strip away the clothes. And these people who come just dressed to the nines are reduced to the base human that everybody else around them is.
That's awesome.
I mean, it is kind of neat when you think of it like that. And he had something called the Chamber of the Golden Fleece, which was pretty interesting. So you walk into this room and it said that there were brilliant frescoes that covered the walls, illuminating every moment of the tale of like, Jason and the fleece. And
Mm-hmm.
in the middle was a wooden statue of a hermit that would recount to visitors how the Greek hero Jason traveled through strange and treacherous lands and to find the golden fleece. And then this is inside. or I presume inside, there was a flash and a crash of thunder, and rain and snow poured from the ceiling. And it was as if visitors were caught in furious tempests that rocked Jason's ship.
Oh my gosh. So this guy was like the set designer of the universe. Like, I
Yeah.
am out to have a good time inside.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love it.
I mean, it was so fascinating because I was like, how would you do like, and that's when I was like, but he had a robot that said the words. And it's like, we don't really know. It could have been a robot that had a series of flashcards that kind of, I mean, I assume it had words because I've been to the haunted castle or the haunted house at Disneyland. Like I'm familiar, like, so I was imagining a lot of that, and it could have been a lot of my own projections on this, but it was still just incredible.
Absolutely.
And it was so when you think about like, just all of the things that went into that part of the castle that had the golden fleece story, like there were delights in this garden and it was designed to humiliate them. And it really tried to take them out of their current world. And when you look at like the story of Jason, one author says to take on that heroism, you must get soaked. That transformation demands torment or at least discomfort, like a blitz of flour to the face. And it was just incredible of like, those really immersive tales that pull you out of your current life and just like spat this craziness at you that you can't look away.
I love it.
And so then when I was reading about all this, I was like, okay, this is an incredible tale. Like how does it end?
Yeah.
His end wasn't as magical. So
Hmm.
you remember how I said it in the spring of 18 or of 1302, his wolf went on a killing spree?
Hmm.
Well, just after that in June, Count Robert dies in battle. He's fighting against the Flemish and in a
Always the
bloodlust.
Flemish.
I mean, apparently it was a thing. It was just, big rivalries. Robert, he calls for his men, his infantry to pull back because he wants the infantry to come back. He wants to be just charge forward with the cavalry and really, really take over and kind of be heroic. And he didn't necessarily pay too much attention to the battlefield, or there was something that he didn't quite see. And so the horses had a hard time with the water and the terrain and all of that. By the time the cavalry realized this, it was too late, and thousands of French soldiers were dead or dying.
Ugh.
And the battle is referred to as the Battle of the Golden Spurs due to the golden spurs that the aristocrats from the cavalry were wearing and riding into battle. The spurs were taken from their bodies and hung on the church of Our Lady Contrai, and one of the spurs were undoubtedly Count Robert's.
Mm.
But I mean, we do know just from the accounts that even though he ended on a low note, his daughter carried on with the whimsy of the garden for, a chunk of time. And that the
That's
garden
awesome.
maintained until the 1500s.
I love
Really,
that.
200 years.
Well, yeah, I mean, like when your granddad sets up a thing like this and he's been pranking the locals for his whole life, you kind of gotta carry that off.
Yeah, I mean, the machine's already built. I mean, those monkeys, they don't eat
Yeah.
anything.
And to boot that, how do you even like I feel like if it were me, I would be perpetually like always perplexed by these things. Like, oh, I found another one.
I cleaned back those
Crap.
briars and I had an automata beat me with a stick.
Exactly. Like, I really see that there's some like absolute great humor, but also like to be like, I don't know why, but when you were describing some of the things that happened inside, I was imagining like the Duke getting up to go, or the Count getting up to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night and like being taken out by his own machinations.
Wanders into the wrong room and all of a sudden
Yeah. Ugh, I hate
badger
this
skin
guy.
clad monkeys attack him.
Yeah, that was exactly what I was thinking. So, like, how do you not keep that going on? And be slightly inconvenienced by my own doing.
Or his daughter who just moves him into different spots in the middle of the night just to mess with her dad.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I would do it.
I mean, I would be excited and concerned every time I got a gift from that man.
Yeah. Do I want to open this? Hmm.
Why don't you open this, dear? Yeah, I'm so excited. I'll keep what's ever in the box, but I'm not pulling that ribbon.
Yep, that's all you, babe. Yeah,
Yep.
I don't, nope. Oh my gosh. My imagination is just like over the over the moon with what
Could you
could have
imagine
looked like.
being like the servants at his castle? Because it's like, it snowed 4 times in that room today, and I've got to go clean it out again because that is a huge slip hazard. And the last time,
I'm imagining like, the disgruntled employee that like absolutely hates his job but goes and does it well every day. Like that's what I'm imagining.
the entire staff full of them.
Yep, like, oh, I hate this job.
Yeah, that surprise bidet gets me every time.
Every time. Yeah, that's the poor employees. I would like to hear their journal entries.
So I was back at the castle.
Oh, it was her ancestor.
And the
Does she have a
damn wolf
name?
stole the ham out of the back room.
We're gonna call her Cindy from now on, I think. What do you think? Does Cindy work?
I mean, it beats Karen.
I would like her to make an appearance in at least one story every episode.
I'll do what I can.
Sincerely and benevolently yours.
The antithesis of that is always great. Malignantly and malevolently yours.
Yours. I absolutely love that. I cannot wait to tell Ethan that I found his next escape room.
Yeah, but from 1290 or
Yeah, he's gonna need a
1302
time machine.
and to speak French.
We'll work it out.
Okay. I mean, that's all you got to do. Just tell him to look up the Hesdin Castle.
Yeah, I feel like French in 1290 versus French today is probably very different. Much
Yeah.
the same that English in 1290 versus English today.
What I learned is that England in 1957 is very different than England today.
Just put a sprig of spaghetti in the tomato sauce.
And hope for the best.
Hope for the best.
We told these idiots that they just had to hope.
Twice. Once in 1290 and once in 1957.
It was perfect.
Loved it.
Well, if you have enjoyed our April Fool's Day episode, even though it's not April Fool's Day yet, it's done just in time because this April Fool's Day didn't land on a Friday. And you want to give me a birthday present because my birthday is April Fool's Day, you can share this podcast with a friend, make them listen to it against their will.
Or for their will, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, you choose for them. Leave a review, rate, subscribe, and make everybody compulsively listen or not.
We're going to keep telling stories anyway.
If you'd like to give us an email and tell us how much you liked, is it Cindy or Linda? Who's
Linda's good too.
Linda? Okay.
You know what? Could you just name her? That'd be great.
Yeah, if you have a name for my compulsive chain smoking East Coast operator, give us an email at unhinged.historypod@gmail.com. And on that note, we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.